A signal from the depths of the cosmos pulsed every 16 days, like a heartbeat from a distant, invisible world. Astronomers tracked it meticulously, expecting the rhythm to continue, but the moment humanity sent a reply, it vanished without a trace. Could this be the first contact with an intelligence beyond Earth? Or a cosmic trick we are too early to understand? Why would something so deliberate stop the instant we reached out? Tonight, we explore the mystery that challenges our very understanding of communication, consciousness, and the silent universe around us. A story that begins with a whisper and leaves us staring at the stars, wondering if someone or something was listening all along. After the signal vanished, the world waited with bated breath. Scientists scrambled to understand why it had stopped, running simulations and scanning the cosmos for any trace of its origin. Dr. Elena Ramirez and Li Wei discovered a strange pattern hidden within the timing of the pulses, something that seemed almost intentional. Could it be a message designed to test us, or a warning we were not ready to hear? The more they studied, the more unsettling it became. This was not random. Somewhere in the void, something was aware of their presence, watching as humanity dared to respond. Late one night, a mysterious anomaly appeared in the data, a series of faint signals echoing from the same region of space, but not following the 16-day rhythm. They were irregular, fragmented, almost like whispers, as if someone or something was hesitant to communicate. Dr. Ramirez felt a chill run down her spine. These signals weren't just science. They were a puzzle, a language coded in cosmic silence, and with every attempt to decode them, the universe seemed to shift, as if aware of their probing. The scientific community was divided. Some claimed the signals were natural phenomena, random bursts from a distant pulsar. Others argued they were far too precise, too regular to be anything but artificial. Dr. Ramirez and Li Wei began mapping the path of the pulses, tracing a pattern that seemed to form coordinates, a location in the galaxy, perhaps a point of origin. But what lay there was unknown, and the uncertainty carried a weight heavier than gravity. Humanity was listening, and the cosmos might be listening back. Then came the moment no one expected. A reply was sent from Earth, a simple signal encoded with humanity's existence. And in that instant, silence fell. The pulses ceased entirely. Every telescope trained on that distant point of light recorded nothing. Dr. Ramirez stared at the blank monitors, heart pounding. Had humanity frightened them? Or was this silence a message itself, a warning etched across light years? The cosmos had responded, not with sound, but with absence, and the void had never felt heavier. The silence that followed Earth's reply was deafening. Dr. Elena Ramirez and Li Wei wondered if they had made a grave mistake. As weeks passed, faint anomalies began to appear, tiny fluctuations in cosmic background noise that suggested the signal might not be gone entirely, only hidden. Was this the first hint of a larger intelligence deliberately concealing itself? Humanity had spoken, and now the universe seemed to be testing its response. One anomaly stood out, a pattern repeating every 16 days. But this time it was different, almost like a distorted echo of the original signal. Dr. Ramirez realized that it might be a response to Earth's own message. The realization was chilling. They were not alone, and the cosmos had chosen how to communicate on its own terms. Each pulse carried intent, and each silence felt deliberate. Dr. Ramirez began to notice subtle patterns embedded in the signal, like a hidden code. It was as if the universe was teaching them, guiding humanity toward understanding, while carefully keeping the rules just beyond reach. Could this be a cosmic test, a way to measure how ready humanity was for first contact? Every discovery deepened the mystery, and the line between science and something far stranger blurred. Meanwhile, the scientific world outside the observatory buzzed with speculation. Media outlets called it the 16-day mystery, while skeptics dismissed it as cosmic coincidence. But Dr. Ramirez knew better. The signal had intent, and the very act of responding had changed it. Humanity was no longer just an observer. It was now part of an intricate cosmic dance, one where every step mattered and silence was as meaningful as sound. Late one evening, a new breakthrough appeared. A faint secondary signal layered beneath the original pulses, almost imperceptible but unmistakably structured. Dr. Ramirez stared at the screen, realizing that the universe had responded in a way no one expected. It wasn't silence, it was communication, but in a language humanity was only beginning to decode. The 16-day mystery was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. Dr. Eleanor Ramirez and Lee Wei sat before the new signal, barely able to contain their excitement. What had once been a simple anomaly was now a series of complex messages embedded in the cosmic noise, as if the universe itself were whispering a secret. The pulse, initially a simple pattern, had become an elaborate exchange, one that demanded an answer. But the question lingered. What was the nature of the intelligence behind the signal, and what did it want from humanity? As the signal became more coherent, it began to form a pattern of mathematical equations, each more complex than the last. Dr. Ramirez recognized the structure. This wasn't just a random burst of cosmic noise. This was an intelligence, a mind calculating and communicating in a language of pure logic. But the more they decoded, the more terrifying the implications became. Were they being invited, or were they being tested? A breakthrough came when the patterns in the signal were cross-referenced with ancient mathematical formulas. It was then that Dr. Ramirez realized this wasn't just any intelligence. It was one that had been observing humanity for far longer than they could comprehend. Every signal, every pause, every burst of energy felt calculated. Whoever, or whatever was sending the signals, had been watching Earth for millennia. The communication seemed to evolve in response to their decoding efforts. Each new attempt to understand the signals brought a new, more sophisticated layer. Dr. Ramirez and Li Wei were no longer merely passive observers. They were participants in an ongoing dialogue with an intelligence far older and far more advanced than their own. But then a chilling realization hit them. What if the next stage in this conversation was beyond human comprehension? The final stage came unexpectedly. A single, clear pulse shot through the signal, a message that transcended math, sound, and logic. It was a vision, a surreal image of a distant world, far beyond Earth's reach. The message was not just about knowledge or warning. It was an invitation. An invitation to join something far greater than humanity had ever imagined. The question now wasn't just whether humanity would accept, but whether they were ready for what lay beyond the stars. The message was clear, but the choice was not. Dr. Elena Ramirez and Li Wei knew that accepting the invitation was a risk, one that could change humanity forever. It was a leap into the unknown, a challenge to everything humans had believed about their place in the universe. The invitation was not just for exploration, it was for connection. But were they ready to meet the beings behind the signal? Or had they made a grave mistake in responding at all? The world's governments convened in secret, debating whether to respond, the consequences of accepting or rejecting the invitation were beyond their comprehension. Some feared that humanity might be entering a trap. Others believed it was a chance to elevate civilization beyond its limits. Dr. Ramirez, despite her fear, knew what had to be done. She looked at Li Wei, and without saying a word, they both understood it was time to send the reply. As the response was transmitted, a deep, palpable silence settled over the observatory. Hours passed. Then, just as the team began to lose hope, the signal returned, a new pulse, stronger than any before, now rippling through the data. The message had been received. This time, it wasn't just a vision or a code. It was an understanding, a direct transmission, a connection unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. The universe had heard them, and it was waiting. The transmission wasn't just data. It was emotion, thought, and understanding transmitted across light years. Dr. Ramirez and Li Wei deciphered the core of the message. The beings who had been watching Earth were not invaders or conquerors. They were a kind of cosmic guide, offering humanity a chance to join something far greater. Something beyond the stars. But it wasn't just a gift. It was a responsibility. The universe was not a silent void. It was alive, and humanity now had a role to play. The choice had been made. Humanity had accepted the invitation, and the cosmic dialogue had begun. What followed was not a single moment, but an evolution. A shift in understanding, in awareness. Dr. Ramirez and Li Wei knew that the future had irrevocably changed. They had opened a door to the stars, and now the universe would never be the same. The signal had brought them to the edge of something monumental. And together, humanity would step forward into the unknown, knowing they were no longer alone in the vast expanse of the cosmos. As humanity began to understand the true magnitude of the connection, a new question emerged. What was the cost of joining something so vast, so ancient, and so enigmatic? Dr. Ramirez and Li Wei spent sleepless nights analyzing the cosmic message further, finding hidden layers and warnings that they hadn't seen before. The message was clear, but there were risks. The universe did not simply share its knowledge, it demanded change, and for some, that change would be too much to bear. The world watched as humanity began to receive and decode new messages. The signals came more frequently, but they weren't just about knowledge. They were about transformation. These messages carried with them knowledge that was beyond human understanding, new ways of thinking, seeing, and even existing. The challenge wasn't merely understanding the message, it was whether humanity was ready to accept the changes that would come with it. Soon the transformation began. People around the world reported strange dreams, flashes of insight, and sudden bursts of creativity. But the messages were also taking their toll. Some minds were overwhelmed by the influx of information. The boundaries of reality seemed to bend for a few. Dr. Ramirez feared that the changes were irreversible, that humanity might be losing its sense of self in the face of something so vast. The universe had shown them a way forward, but the question remained, was humanity capable of understanding and surviving what lay ahead? As the effects of the signal grew more profound, Dr. Ramirez and Li Wei realized they had underestimated the depth of the change. People were no longer simply receiving information. They were becoming part of a larger consciousness, linking minds across the globe. Some embraced the transformation, finding clarity and purpose beyond anything they had known. Others struggled, unable to cope with the overwhelming flood of knowledge and perspective. The line between individual identity and collective consciousness was becoming increasingly blurred. The final transmission arrived with no warning, an image of the vast expanse of the cosmos, stretching infinitely in all directions. It was a reminder that this journey, this transformation, was not an end, but a beginning. Humanity was now part of something far greater than itself. Dr. Ramirez and Li Wei understood. This was the moment of choice. The signal was no longer a message from the stars. It was a challenge to evolve. Humanity could either remain as it was, struggling to make sense of the universe, or it could embrace the transformation, stepping into a new role among the stars. The future, as vast and unknown as the cosmos itself, was now theirs to shape. As humanity embraced the transformation, the effects were both beautiful and terrifying. Minds that had been touched by the signal now found themselves experiencing the world in ways they never thought possible. Time seemed to stretch, and the boundaries between individuals blurred. People no longer thought in isolation. Instead, they shared thoughts, emotions, and ideas instantaneously. But this rapid collective evolution came with its own dangers. Would humanity lose its identity in the process? Or would they transcend their limitations and become something greater? The first signs of chaos began when entire cities, once thriving, began to dissolve into a single collective consciousness. Those who resisted the transformation struggled to hold on to their identities. Some wanted to be part of this new, interconnected whole, while others feared losing themselves forever. Dr. Ramirez knew that the choice humanity had made was irreversible. The transformation was no longer a question of whether it would happen. It was a question of how humanity would adapt to their new existence, and whether they could maintain their sense of individuality while becoming something much greater. As the collective consciousness grew stronger, it became clear that humanity was no longer operating as individuals. Some called it unity. Others called it the end of freedom. Yet, despite the growing uncertainty, something incredible began to happen. The new collective mind of humanity was able to solve problems that had once seemed insurmountable. Diseases were cured in moments, energy crises were solved overnight, and solutions to climate change were found almost instinctively. Humanity, now connected in ways unimaginable, was solving problems that had plagued them for centuries. But with each solution, the cost of individual identity grew heavier. The line between human and cosmic intelligence was beginning to fade. The collective mind was no longer simply human in nature. It had begun to take on the characteristics of the intelligence that had guided them. Ideas, knowledge, and wisdom from across the universe were flowing into their minds, expanding their awareness beyond anything the human race had ever conceived. Dr. Ramirez realized that humanity was becoming part of something far greater than itself, an intelligence that had existed long before Earth and would endure long after humanity's time on this planet had passed. The transformation was complete. Humanity had stepped into a new existence, one in which the boundaries between the individual and the collective were no longer defined. The universe had given them the gift of cosmic knowledge, but with it came the responsibility of understanding their role in the larger, eternal cycle of existence. Dr. Ramirez and Li Wei had played their part in this first contact, and as the world outside their observatory changed forever, they knew that humanity's place in the cosmos had been irrevocably altered. The true nature of the universe was now open to them, but so too were the challenges of understanding and accepting it. Humanity was no longer simply earthbound. It was part of the fabric of the cosmos. The journey had only just begun. The world had changed, but with change came uncertainty. The collective consciousness, once a source of unity, began to show signs of strain. While early advancements were undeniable, the sense of individuality and personal autonomy began to blur for many. The minds that had once been separate now flowed together in an overwhelming tide. Dr. Elena Ramirez and Lee watched as the world's leaders and citizens struggled to maintain their identity in the face of overwhelming unity. It was a new era, but it was not without its challenges. Humanity was still learning how to live within the vastness of the collective mind. As more individuals merged into the collective mind, a disturbing pattern emerged. People who had been part of the transformation began to lose their ability to make decisions for themselves. They spoke with one voice, one shared thought, but the uniqueness of their humanity was slowly slipping away. Dr. Ramirez realized that the very thing they had once celebrated, the melding of minds, was now threatening to erase what it meant to be human. The cost of unity was becoming clearer, and the question arose: could humanity survive as a collective without losing what made them truly human? The loss of individual identity was not limited to the masses. It was affecting the scientists and intellectuals who had led humanity into this new era. Dr. Ramirez and Li Wei, despite being among the few still able to retain a sense of autonomy, found themselves slowly slipping into the collective as well. Thoughts that had once been their own now felt like echoes of something much larger. The struggle between personal will and collective knowledge was reaching a tipping point. Could humanity restore balance, or had they already gone too far down the path of unity? A new signal arrived, but this one was different. It was not a simple transmission of knowledge, It was a warning. The cosmic intelligence that had first reached out to humanity had observed the growing instability and recognized the risk. The message was clear. Unity could bring enlightenment, but it could also bring destruction. Humanity needed to decide to continue down this path and risk losing everything, or to find a way to restore balance and regain what had been sacrificed. Dr. Ramirez realized that the true test had arrived. Humanity's next choice would define their future, and perhaps their very existence. The decision had to be made. The world held its breath as Dr. Ramirez and Li Wei prepared to transmit a response. But this time, the reply would be different. It wasn't just a message. It was a choice. Would humanity retreat from the collective consciousness and restore individual autonomy, or would they embrace the unity fully, risking their own uniqueness in the process? As they sent the transmission, Dr. Ramirez felt the weight of humanity's future on her shoulders. The stars above them seemed to watch in silence as the final decision was made.